segment is called Soul Ties, and this is going to be a continuation from where I left off in the last video regarding my ex's uncle. So, like I said, this guy, he's really a plate, like pure food. He's a full platter, a nice hot plate. So, this dude here, man, I really believe that I was a major influence in his life because I am from where I'm from Bronx, and Connecticut is a ghost town. There's nothing going on out there. So when I got there, it was like I brought life to the party. I was the life of the party. So, you know, I feel like that made him wanna, be like me. So everything that I did, he emulated. The girls that I spoke to, he spoke to. That wasn't my thing. If I like a girl, I like a girl. I'm not gonna go like a girl because somebody else like a girl. I like to have my own fly. I like to have my own, type of, mindset. I don't latch on to what people do. So that wasn't my thing. But this guy, he's not a leader. He's a follower. So that was one thing that I didn't like about him. And it was one time that he tailed me, and he told me afterwards. So I was driving, and he just happened to see me on the road, and he tailed me, but he didn't like honk at me or pull me to the side and say, "Oh, it's good." He just followed me and then told me maybe like a couple of days later. I don't know how that went. And then at the same time, when I got cut, he reached out to me. He reached out to me like a week or two later after I got cut. And, my ex and uncle, I didn't hang out with him often. Every time I hung out with him, it was always something next, like some next shit. It was never just us chilling and really having a good time. It's always some type of motive. It was never just vibes. So, yeah, that dude was a clown. Yeah. So, yeah. And, there were situations that I was in, and I needed help, and he wasn't there. So, but whenever he needed help, I was available. And now that I'm older and mature, I'm making myself less available to people. I'm only available to people that appreciate me. So, you know, so it's kind of wild. Kind of wild. So it was a situation where he needed help. We lived in Danbury, Connecticut, Fairfield Ridge, and he had beef with somebody. So I'm like, okay, let's go over it. We went over it. I pulled over sticks and switches and all that. And we didn't do anything because I realized that it wasn't worth the fight. The guy that he was beefing with, I recognized him because we all met up at one point in Avalon. We was all cool. So I'm like, why are you beefing with this guy? And he came out. It was him and his brother. And they brought a baby outside. I'm like, look, nah, we not doing that. And I don't got no problem with y'all. So see, this guy, my ex's uncle, he was always an instigator. He was always just starting things for no reason. But see, I still showed up. And then there was another situation near the Denver Police Department. And I think that's not ironic. That's what it is, you know, like nigga police. So it was a situation where he had beat somebody. I pulled up, and they got to fighting. It wasn't really a real fight, and you know, I was observing, make sure nobody really got hurt, you know. And then that was the end of that. But I was always available for that dude. Like I said, I was hooking him up. I was even offering, you know, to help him. But his ego and his pride wouldn't allow him to work with me. And it's a good thing, you know, that we didn't work together, because who knew, he probably would have really tried to rob me or, you know, kill me or anything. And because, you know, I'm close with, you know, his niece, who would have really thought that he would have done anything? See? So it's a very like a gray area. So yeah, man. So yeah. So I was understanding, but I don't care about being understanding anymore. I don't give a fuck. You know, I'm not sympathizing with something that's, you know, wicked and evil. Whatever happens to him is whatever happens to him. And then, you know, his mother got shot by his father. And I believe his father's in jail now. So, yeah, you know, that's a pretty rough upbringing. But that doesn't justify you to treat people like shit, especially if they haven't done anything to you. Now, if somebody's done something to you, then alright. But just picking random people and not even being up front, you could just be doing some secret innuendo shit. And nah, I don't go for that. That's not my character. I'm blunt and I'm up front. People know that. So, yeah, I don't respect that. And then, you know, my ex, she had the audacity, but this is her life, you know. She decided to go back over here for the holidays, and she hasn't seen him in a while, so I understand. And it's not about this guy, it's about seeing her family, and I get that. But after all that shit, I wouldn't even want to go back, because if it was me, and I went through tough situations with my family that I know I can't come back from, I wouldn't go back. But see, that's because my morals and my integrity is different than hers. And I guess that's why, you know, her and I aren't compatible, because we don't see through the same lenses. But I thought maybe because opposites attract that we would work, but that's not the case. So she went back anyways, but she's a grown woman, she can do what she wants, without me. So, you know, and then my ex's mother, she got roped on too. She got roped on by her sister's father. And her mother said something about it, and, you know, my ex's mother's mother didn't do anything about it. They just put that shit under the bridge, water under the bridge, you know, like, they just brushed that shit off. So it's like, what kind of family is that? I wouldn't go back to a family like that. You know, like, that shit doesn't sit right with me. You know, that shit's weird. So, whatever. You know, she go out there, cool. You know. And like I said, you know, I ain't got no problem with that family. I just got a problem with who I got a problem with, because I see shit, you know, like, I know a snake when I see one. And that guy's a snake, so it is what it is. You know. So, you know, before I even speak about my family, you know, I'm gonna speak about my ex, because we just went through a breakup. We've really been broken up for a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, but she came along on my journey, you know, to help me out, and I helped her out. But then it just started getting sour, because she felt like I wasn't fulfilling her needs, and that's not true. I've been fulfilling her needs, doing everything I'm supposed to do as a man. You know, being security, being a provider and a lover. I was doing all those things. But when you with somebody for, a period of time, it gets tiring. So I guess that's what it was. She got tired of me. And, she started going out and hanging out with other niggas. And I wasn't feeling that. Like, you're not going to be doing that while you're in my house. You know, I can't just look at you as a roommate. We've been through too much. So, I kicked her out. She kept doing that shit, hanging out with other people, living in my space. She didn't bring anybody to my crib, which was cool, but it's like, man, you think you're gonna do that and come lay in my bed or be in my house? Nah, I'm not feeling that strap. I kicked it to the motherfucking curb. I couldn't handle it no more. See, after a while, I just burst, like, I didn't put hands on her, nothing, but I'm just saying, see, that's the shit that be happening, because of built up frustration and not being heard and not being respected. So, now I kicked her out. And I'm like, hey, go stay with the nigga that you doing. Go live with that nigga. Leave me the fuck alone, So, that's what it was. She was doing way too much. She could have waited until she got her own spot to do that, man. But she in her own spot now. And that's what matters. So, moving forward, I don't know what to do. We still live pretty close, so it's like I still have to deal with her. Her name is on my lease, my name is on hers because I assisted her and I don't have to do that. And then she also mentioned that I'm not, valuable in her life. But if I wasn't valuable in her life, then you wouldn't have gotten that apartment. A lot of the things that she had going on in her life was because of me. Like, she wouldn't have met whoever she met because of me. She would have went back to Connecticut, or she would have went somewhere else, and lived her life. But a lot of the things that's going on in her life is because of me. Simple as that. So, give credit where credit is due. Like, I fucking changed her life. And, because she wanna be prideful, she can't admit that. She can't be like, yes, you did change my life, Shot. Nah, you know what I'm saying? A woman will never tell you that. A real woman would, though. A woman that is grateful and appreciative will tell you that. So, see, like right now, even though pretty much like neighbors, we don't live next door, but it's like we're not far apart. And we still got contracts. So, I still have to deal with her to an extent. But see, moving forward, I don't know if I want to deal with her because she put me through a lot of pain. I already been through pain, so it's like, I think I want to keep going through pain. Nah, fuck that shit. So, now I'm doing me, I'm doing my own thing, and this will be the last time I talk about her and, her family and whatever situations they got. Now we speak about my family. So, my uncle, he was in Stevenson Commons just like I was. And it's crazy how my uncle and my ex, they have the same birthday, literally. So, when I was younger, staying in Stevenson Commons, there was a nigga that beat him up in my grandmother's apartment in the hallway. Just broke him down. And it was these blood dudes, you see what I'm saying? That's what I was raised around when I was younger. And, they broke him down. I don't know why, whatever, it happened. So years later, my uncle still decides to hang in that area and be around dudes. I'm like, yo, I wouldn't be around them dudes. And he still, was doing it. And, he has a drug problem. So I feel like that might have been, a catalyst, and, made it, pretentious on why he kept going back. I feel like that was the only family he had. But that wasn't true. He had other family like me and my mother and my sister and people that cared about him. So he didn't have to keep going back to dysfunction. So this guy, man, yeah, he's blood and all that as far as my family. But, blood doesn't mean blood. Because he invited me to come hang out there knowing that I had problems with this area and this community. Yeah, I was raised there, but invite me to no get together, no party, no gathering, nothing. Because I don't know who's gonna pull up there and who's gonna show their ass and give me a problem. But he had the audacity to ask me, so that let me know right there I can't fuck with him. And then while I was doing what I was doing in the street, I even put him in a situation to get money, you know. And I thought because he was my family, I should do it, and it was convenient, I guess. But I realized like me going back from Connecticut to New York, going back and forth doing what I was doing wasn't worth it. You know, I could have just kept doing what I was doing in Connecticut, but I did it because it was family. You know, but so all of that shit was sketchy. All that shit was suspect. So like I said, I ain't being prejudiced or biased towards anybody. I'm talking about everybody, and family. So man, I can't deal with him either. And then when he speaks to me, like when he texts and stuff, he'll call me Few, like a nickname for nephew. You call me motherfucking nephew, or you call me nephew. You don't call me no motherfucking Few. I'm not Few. I'm not less than. I'm more than. You don't reduce me. I'm a grown man. So it's a lot of underhanded shit at play. So I'm like, nah, I can't fuck with something. I don't give a fuck with your family. When I was a kid, it was different. But when you start growing a pair of balls and you feel how you feel, the motherfuckers, it's shaking nigga, So I'm like, okay. So I'm not dealing with him either. And then one of my cousins, he a little gossiping ass nigga, and he talks, a lot behind closed doors, but when he's around me, he's really quiet. And I was the one always starting conversations. It was like I had to keep feeding this nigga. I gotta keep feeding this nigga. If I don't say anything, we'll just be sitting there and he'll be dead. And I'm cool with that too. And that's what I realized. I'll sit there and be quiet, and then he won't say nothing at all. It'll just be some bullshit about sports or basketball, but it's never anything regarding his life and the people he deal with. And it's always about me and my life, about the females I'm messing with, and my situations. But with him, I never knew what was going on. He was quiet. So I'm like, nah, I can't deal with son either. And the last time he hollered at me and reached out, he texted me about somebody else. He said, are you still cool with so-and-so? I'm like, man, are you and I still cool? That's the real question. You worry about this motherfucker, you'll be worried about me and you. So I'm like, dang, I can't fuck with this nigga either. Like, you see what I'm saying? It's just not genuine, like. And then he even told me he hated me one time, but this is through message, I'm like, what the fuck you hate me for? I never did anything for you to hate me. You be a blessing in motherfuckers' lives and they hate you. But see, that's what happened with Jesus, right? Jesus was a blessing, trying to help people and change, and they killed him. They hanged him for helping people. So like I said, I'm not gonna be Jesus, That's why I said I'm on offense now, like, motherfuckers wanna make me a target, I'm gonna start making niggas targets, and now it'll be motherfucking target practice, have a fucking shootout. I don't give a fuck about nothing, The only thing I care about is bettering myself and, growing as an individual. So, and whoever wants to tag along and help me, then they can. So, and then I had another cousin, we was cool when we was younger, but, he grew up, got kids and all. And he told me he was in a situation where motherfuckers was beating on him and jumping on him in his neighborhood in Queens. So I'm like, oh word, let me come out there, let me hold you down. So, I gave him a go ahead there, estoy hablando español, so, I gotta speak in code. So motherfuckers don't really know what I'm saying. I had to basically hold him down so he wasn't getting hurt anymore. And he got into a situation and he crashed out, and he's out now, but I don't know how the hell he got out so quick. That doesn't make any sense, especially in New York. That doesn't make any sense. If you're doing things like that, crashing out in New York, they give you that hard time, like, seriously, like. So who knows what kind of information he gave to get out, and it has something to do with me. And then his father's the police, and then his father told me that I'm going to jail over the phone. I told him the situation, like, yo, I try to help your son out. And then he said, Shotgun, you going to jail. I'm like, what? alright, man. I just hung up the phone. So see, and then this thing too. My cousin's father, he was cool with my stepfather that, you know, gave my mother a hard time, and he gave me a hard time, my stepfather. And then that nigga contracted HIV, and he could have handed it off to my mom. And he didn't say anything about it. My mother had to go find out and make sure, she was straight, you know. But he, she was snooping around and found the paperwork, but he ain't say a word. You see what I'm saying? And then my cousin's father decided to be cool with that guy. So once again, this is why I can't fuck with family. Family doing all this backdoor shicey shit. So that's where I'm at with family. I don't give a fuck whose family it is. That's with my own goddamn family. I'm starting from fucking scratch. Fuck this shit. Yeah, I'm giving it to you raw, man. Unadulterated, raw, clear truth. This is what I do. So I'm like, man, alright. So, that's why I can't see certain motherfuckers. I don't give a fuck with family now. I'm like, damn, well, I'm not even gonna think, like I said, because, and maybe that's a fucked up way to think. Because people do grow and people do change, but I'm not giving people the opportunity to grow and change. You guys now, motherfucker, tomorrow's not promised. And I know change takes time, but it has to be a daily change. You have to wake up and be like, okay, how can I be better? And I don't see that from a lot of people. So I like to stay in my own bubble. I like being alone. I don't mind being alone. That helps me focus. That helps me have a clear vision. I don't like the obscure shit where it gotta be foggy and gray and nah. I want to know what it is. So that's me. Yeah. So that pretty much sums it up for this video. You can like, comment, share, subscribe. I hope that you guys have a wonderful holiday. Well, you should. I'm going to, no matter what the circumstances may be. Life goes on. So peace out.